Welcome back to the Now Morning Show. Such a perfect tune as we go into our next conversation. Joining us in studio is no stranger to the Now Morning Show, Richard Solomon, and we are going to be speaking on a conversation that has been trending, speaking about the changing of the coat of arms, but from a socio and historic perspective.
Yeah. I'm glad that we are finally taking the plunge, and I'm happy to have this conversation.
And we're happy to have you here as well. In fact, we were just chatting briefly off air, going really all over the place, but back to a means to the same end, which is the change and the fact that we've seen so many people either throw their hand into the pot, have comments with the fact that this is not the first time we've spoken about this, but now we see it coming to pass. What would you say is the significance of the coat of arms to Trinidad and Tobago particularly?
I mean, historically, crests and coat of arms and so on were the insignia of a clan or a nation. They have a European history, but in the modern world, they've come to signify something about who these people are.
Right.
You know, similar to other emblems like our national flag, etc. Yeah.
And as you mentioned that, again, as we were discussing, when it comes to society today, do we see that appreciation of the significance? And is it really significant to us as individuals?
I mean, we're talking about humans, and therefore I think there's a variation across the grouping that is our population as to whether this is significant or not. I think for some of us, when we look at these emblems, they mean something to us. For others, I've heard people say, well, this doesn't impact my life one way or the other on a daily basis. So I guess it depends on who you're talking to. But I think as a nation, we have to hold some things as sacred and important. And even though there may be those who don't see the criticality of it, those of us who understand, we've got to hold those things in place. So I would say very, very significant to us as a people,
Definitely. And of course, just, I mean, taking a look at it, of course, including or maybe not including what is going to be removed, it does resonate with many of us as well within our spirit and our patriotism as well. Now, there are some who don't necessarily agree with it, and they say, well, you know, the voyage of Columbus is a significant contribution or reason that we're here today. Regardless of historical accuracy, of course, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. What do you think about that? Do you think it is something to celebrate or no?
Well, the ships are probably wrong.
Yes,
you know, in terms of which ships there were. We know Queen Isabella and Ferdinand gave Columbus money to come to this part of the world, or to come to some part of the world. You know, he was probably lost. But I think in terms of the importance of it, I think we have to put it into historical context. Columbus was a genocidal, marauding, pillaging human. Let's just call it that. That's true. After the third voyage, the Spanish tried him and imprisoned him for the dastardly acts he did in the so-called New World. The argument that we may not have been here is probably a good argument, you know, but there were people here.
Exactly.
They kill 8 million people across this region, you know, because of their incursion into this area. And so the issue now becomes for me, is this someone to celebrate? So we accept the history that his move into this part of the world brought disease and people and slavery and indentureship. It was the beginning of those things, yes. But is that something to be celebrated? And that's the point. We need to know the history, but do we now create a monument? As we have at the mouth of the capital city. Do we put a statue and say, hey, this is someone important? No, we should not. So to me, that's the thing. We need to know the history. It's important. We need to know the impact of it. But whether we hold on to it and give a point of prominence, I think that is where we are straying.
I couldn't agree with you more, especially as you would have mentioned, which is true. Of course, we see at the mouth of the city, as you said, there is a statue of Columbus there. And we do see now, with access to more information, that people are starting to learn and becoming more aware. So it's something that we need to see that alignment between, let's say, the people and those who are in charge. One of the things that we've also seen people commenting on is the fact that there are so many other things going on in the country right now. Why now? Why are we making this change at a time where one may say there are more pressing needs? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, we could walk and chew gum at the same time.
Correct.
Let's go with that. So the truth is that there'll never be a perfect time, and there'll always be more more critical issues. I agree with people that we have roads to fix and we have a crime problem, and how many ever people fail mathematics and see. We have all these issues to deal with. But none of that prevents us from also attending to other matters. We have to keep in mind that the people who will be dealing with this are not the people who deal with crime on roads.
Exactly.
So we can walk and chew gum as a nation at the same time. That doesn't prevent us. And if it were for some, I mean, there'll never be an ideal time. This is not a urgent issue. It's an important issue, but it's not urgent. In other words, we could keep going as we're going, and okay, arguably the nation continues down the same road. But it is an important issue because symbolism matters. The symbols and the images that we see before us continually, they do affect how we see ourselves. That's important.
Richard, you just walked into my next question, because that's something else a lot of people have been saying as to whether or not this is actually going to bring any positive change to the mindsets of the Trinbagonian, and whether or not it will affect our youth coming up as well. As we were discussing in primary school, you would have learned about the coat of arms. Do you think that with this change, over time, we are going to see a positive effect on society and even our national pride?
We don't build a nation as a prefab nation. You build it brick by brick. And so this is one brick. I can't draw a straight, solid line from this to increase national pride. There's no way I can do that. I don't think anyone can actually say absolutely. However, there's something about being proud of where you're from, and being proud about the people that are there, and the people that have crafted and built this space, and that the representation of this space is being well put forward. And for me, that is a point of pride. I can say for me, I mean, I cannot draw a straight line. But for me, I think that is something that we should be proud about, and we should tinker with and adjust to suit us.
Definitely. I agree with you with that 100%. Of course, as society evolves, we need to see things evolve as well, and do things that we can to, even I say, reinforce that pride as well. Now, let's go back to the mechanics behind the change of the coats of arms. As you would have mentioned, the same people who are dealing with, let's say, security matters and policy are not dealing with the change of the coats of arms. But this change, for some, is being perceived as very sudden. Is it something that can be done overnight, for want of a better expression?
Well, I mean, it's not sudden. There is a committee, I think they were appointed maybe a year and a half or so ago to look into this. There have been and there continue to be public consultations that deal with the issue of symbolism. And again, I'm speaking as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago looking on. I don't have a direct line to the committee members. I'm looking on, but so work has been ongoing. I remember during COVID there was a whole outcry about the statue and various things, and it was thereafter that the committee was appointed. The cabinet can make the decision because the cabinet, well, you know, a simple majority, they can make that decision, and decisions of that nature have been made in the past. So I don't think it's an overnight thing, and it doesn't need to be. Once the decision is made, I think the immediate ones will be things like signage. But we've heard the population say, well, we have to change all the money. No, we don't. Why? I mean, I think what people are using as their sort of baseline for that is what happened a few years ago where they, you know, we changed all the money because there was money laundering issues, and that was a mess, and it was a mad rush, and people had money under a mattress and all these things. But that is not what we have to do in this case. In this case, as things go out of date, your driver's permit, your passport, etc. You have to go for a new one. The new insignia will be there. There's no additional cost. I think the big additional cost would be the insignia on buildings and those kinds of things that would need to be changed. But things like stationery and money and driver's permit and passport, you know, I don't think that is a big logistical issue. It's just a change where the origin of that comes from. And as we produce new ones, we produce new ones.
I'm glad you mentioned cost as well, because of course that's definitely become, for some, a point of contention, because as with everything else, you know, if you do, if you don't, you can't please everybody. And many people have been speaking about that cost factor particularly. Aside from what you would have just mentioned, is there anything else that you think is pertinent to the cost issue that we as a nation should really be aware of as we embrace this change?
So Natasha, we spend money on all kinds of things as a nation as we have to. And as a people, sometimes I think people don't recognize how a nation is run. You know, people think that it's run like our houses. That's not how we run a nation. It's very, very different. So someone hears you're spending a few $1 million on, I don't know, insignia. And they say, well, or painting or something. They say, oh my God, how could we possibly have people who are, yes, that is true. We will always have these issues. But as far as I'm concerned, this is not a major cost factor. I would be shocked if the government were to go into a major cost exercise on this. I don't see any reason. And I've heard people put forward some ridiculous sums of $250 million. And I went, on what?
On what? Yeah.
What are we spending that on? That would be crazy, you know. And I mean, if something like that were to happen, we have to bring the government's foot to the fire and they have to explain. But I can't see why we would do that. I don't think it's a major cost issue. There are going to be a few $1 million spent. And that may sound like a lot at an individual level, but pause, and you have to put it against what the nation spends on an ongoing basis in terms of keeping the nation running. It's billions and billions of dollars.
That is something that is so important as well, which brings us to the points of awareness. We see the change of the coat of arms and awareness of self, but also awareness of how our country is run. Do you think this is an opportunity for us as citizens on the ground to really be able to delve further into how our nation works, why it works?
It's a great opportunity, but people don't pay enough attention. It's not exciting. People love exciting things, and you would notice that even the talk around this issue has begun to peter out.
Of course, yes.
Because it's no longer exciting. But if you want to comment on something and you want to criticize it, fine. At least understand it first. At least take the opportunity to. It's a great time to learn a little bit more. But even do the basics. Let's say it costs $5 million. I don't know what the figure will be. What do we spend on other things? Those numbers are published. There are all kinds of numbers all over the place, and you realize it's a very small sum. We're a nation. We're not a family. So we have to see it from that perspective. So it's probably a great opportunity for people to start to just look at, as a nation, we do things a little bit differently.
I think it's so beautiful what you just said. We're a nation, we're not a family. But the fact that somehow as Trinbagonians, we still seem to be able to blur those lines in a positive fashion, which is something that's so important. I see you shake your head there. Tell me. There's a positive to that. We do allow ourselves to be able to mix well, and notwithstanding, maybe Dr. David Rodder is the best way to go. How we vote is not how we party. So maybe that's a good way to look at it. We've been able to keep ourselves away from the cracks that show up in other societies. So in that way, I guess we could say family. But when I say family, my reference is more, we're not a domestic household. And therefore we can't manage money that way. We have to manage money very differently as a nation. We do, and it's something we need to pay attention to. Final question for you, going back to the coats of arms and the fact that one of the things you would have mentioned is that this is something we're going to see happen over time. When do you think as a nation we will get to that space where we will see that full absorption of the coat of arms onto everything?
Well, Prime Minister gave us a 6-month timeline. He didn't explain it in great detail. Maybe it's to make the decision, because we do have to make some changes, I imagine, to the legislation and so on. But, I would just use the opportunity to say, I think we should just be doing more. And we should do it quickly. I think the name Port of Spain should go. We're the only nation on earth whose capital city is named for another nation. And they weren't very good to us. None of the colonial powers were very good to any of the colonized spaces. So if it were me, and you didn't ask this, Natasha, but I'm taking the opportunity,
by all means.
I would go for Queen, Henry, Friend, all these streets that are named for these colonizers. We have our own heroes.
Yes, we do.
We've minted thousands and thousands of heroes. We've grown them from our very soil. We have many of them. We should rename all our spaces, all our places, all our emblems, all of our buildings after our own heroes. And if you want to borrow from outside of Trinidad and Tobago, please borrow from those who have been good to us. Those that we can look up to. We did a good job with King George V and Nelson Mandela. We can look up to, and there's a point of pride. But please, not anyone who has harmed us. And we have to accept that the British, the Spanish, they have harmed these spaces. They have, and that is not something that I'm giving as a matter of personal opinion. That is a matter of historic fact. And we should not give them a point of presence. A good way probably to end this is you will never see the Jews giving a statue to Hitler.
Exactly. Agreed.
A good way to look at it.
Definitely.
So if it were me, I would be doing a lot more actually, and pull off the plaster, and people would grumble for a little while. But we will probably have a capital city named Kairi.
There we go. And that would be something so beautiful. I couldn't agree with you more. I wish we had more time. And I think this is now the norm when you come on. Can we get some more time? But I know you're going to be back soon. So thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for sharing and bringing some awareness to the situation.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
It's a pleasure to have you. Richard Solomon, Principal Consultants and Managing Director of Development Consulting Centre Limited, here this morning. No stranger to the show. And trust me, he's going to be back. And stay tuned. You don't want to miss what's happening right after this break.